Hello everyone, welcome back. In the last section, we have seen how we installed AWS CLI and AWS SAM CLI. So SAM stands for Serverless Application Model. So what happens is that with SAM, we can easily deploy our Lambda code onto our AWS account and also give any other things like, let's say, attaching API gateway, etc. automatically. And you can also give configuration to attach DynamoDB, etc., where you can store things. So at the end of the day, starting with templates that we have in SAM, it is very easy to edit the templates and deploy our API than starting from scratch. That's why we are going to use AWS SAM. Choose any folder where you want to keep your code. I'm just starting my Windows in this folder. Remember that you can use any operating system, just install the SAM CLI and AWS CLI. Now once you are there, just do SAM init. So it's going to ask for a few things. Which template source would you like to use? So I'm just choosing one, which is AWS Quick Start templates. Which package type would you like to use? So remember, there is zip and image, which is containerization part. If you have a simple code, let's say you are using NLTK, Spacey, or just OpenAI GPT-3 and you want to route through Lambda, you can use the zip file itself. But if you want to deploy any big model that doesn't fit under the constraints of zip file, I think 512 MB or something like that, then you need to choose image, which is a layer on top of Dockerizing and deploying. So automatically AWS Lambda provides that. But since we are just going to deploy our Paraphrase API, we are going to choose zip. So essentially what we are going to do is just pass in any sentence and get the paraphrased version of it to start with. That's the API that we are going to deploy. So here I'm choosing runtime as 2 because we are choosing Python 3.8 runtime. And project name, let's give Learn NLP Paraphraser. That's the project name that I'm giving. Now it's cloning from templates. And again, it asks for which quick start template do you want. Here you have Hello World example, event bridge, etc. So I'm just choosing Hello World example. Awesome. With that, we have learnnlp.paraphraser and this template code automatically created. While you can do quite a lot of things with this, simply just going into Hello World and then app.py requirements, changing that, and template.yaml. This is going to do most of the stuff for us. So open this code in your favorite editor. I'm going to use PyCharm. So in the template.yaml, we have this code. So basically we have globals, function, and timeout. So this is the timeout for Lambda function. If you have slightly long running process, you would like to increase this timeout, Lambda timeout. Usually, let's say I keep this as probably 15 seconds or something, depending on the task. And there is default memory that Lambda has. I'm just going to override that with at least like 1 GB of memory. Perhaps for this simple use case, even the default memory is sufficient, but I'm just showing you how you can easily add parameters here. So you can look more about globals, etc. at this link. So you can learn about YAML file, etc. But for most of the use cases, just whatever the parameters that I'm going to change will be more than sufficient. Now the path is where things get created. So this is appended to the URL of your API. So let's name it with something that is relevant to us. For example, Paraphraser. And this is the get method that we are using, but here we are using post method for our use case. So we will post with a sentence and get back the paraphrased version of it. So we are going to use the post method of HTTP. And let's look at few other things. So this is the final API that will be created. So instead of hello, let's again call it Paraphraser. Awesome. That's mostly the changes that we need. Just to recap, we changed the name to Paraphraser, and we changed the method to post, and we increased the timeout and added memory size. So that's about template.yaml. Nothing much to do here. We can go ahead with our app.py. So requirements.txt, this is where you install all your necessary pip installs, that is the libraries that we are going to use. Usually you should have OpenAI here as well, but what we are going to do is interesting. We are not going to install OpenAI because it will unnecessarily add libraries that are needed for fine-tuning, etc. as well. We don't really need them. So we are going to directly use the REST API call and directly call OpenAI's GPT-3. So let's go back to our app.py. Let's uncomment this request. So we have request. Let's get this code minimized. So this is where we are starting. Let's see how we can add code from our collab notebook that we created previously. So here we have the collab notebook that we created. So we created this function where you can pass in any sentence and get the paraphrased version. Awesome. Let's just add that as well. So here we need some OpenAI things that need to be resolved because we are not doing import OpenAI. We are rather using REST API call. So in order to use that, I'm just pasting some code, which is at the end of the day, what you're doing is calling the OpenAI completions endpoint. And these are the GPT-3 headers where you need to add your GPT-3 key here. I'm going to replace with the right key just before we run. I'm just not showing it here for security reasons. Now what we are going to do here is convert this using REST API call itself. So we have GPT-3 headers, we have GPT-3 URL, and we need GPT-3 payload. So essentially we can convert this into GPT-3 payload like this. Where everything needs to be changed to text, like a JSON input. So all I've done is to change the format so that this is a JSON payload, that is the GPT-3 payload that we are using, and everything else remains the same. So how are we getting this is actually from the documentation, and you have API reference here, that is the completions endpoint. And as you can see, this is the completions endpoint. And instead of just Python, you can choose like curl, etc. So you will understand that this is the format that we need. So there is like content type, authorization that you need to give, etc. Basically what we are doing here is we are taking the curl command and just calling the curl command itself with Python requests library. That's why we have modified. This is the actual JSON that you need to pass and to this API endpoint. So that's exactly what we are doing. This is the API endpoint, and this is the payload that we created with more parameters, and we are passing in here. Now all I'm doing here is adding some context, because we are going to pass in text that is a sentence that needs to be paraphrased in the event body, and we are just loading that body as json.loads and just getting the text parameter from it. This will be evident once you see how you are passing text through Postman client that we are going to use. Don't worry about this, but at the end of the day we are just getting event body and we are extracting the text key from it, and that's the text that we need to paraphrase. Here we are calling it text, but in this simple use case this is the sentence that we need to paraphrase, and all we can do is paraphrase text is equal to this function get paraphrase, where you pass in original text. So now you have both original text and paraphrase text. Awesome. And now we need to return this. So in order to return this, you can just create any kind of dictionary or JSON output that you want to return back. So here I'm just creating output is equal to paraphrased and the actual paraphrase text, and just use this in here to be able to return this. That's about it. This is the code that we created, and this is the requirements.txt file, and this is the YAML file. Let's see this whether this actually runs. So before running this, I'm going to replace this with the correct API token. Okay, I've replaced with the correct API token. Let's see what we can do next. So we can simply run, we did SAM init and we created this folder learnnlp.paraphraser. That's the folder that got created. Let's just change to that. And once you are in this folder, so learnnlp.paraphraser folder, you have added this code. Now let's do just SAM build, SAM build. So we did SAM init to create this folder by choosing a template. Now we adapted our code and we are doing SAM build. This is going to show us if there are any errors in our template file, etc. and requirements and other things, or if everything works good. Awesome, looks like our changes are good, so everything works fine. Now the beauty is that before doing actual production deployment and seeing whether this code works or not, what you can actually do is start an API locally. So first go ahead and install Docker. So download Docker desktop and install it for your operating system, and just go through the process and get it up and running. So if you just press Docker, once the installation is good, it should just output something. So no matter what your operating system is, go ahead and do this. And why do we need to do this is simply because instead of actually deploying it into the cloud and testing, if you have a Docker locally, you can actually test out the API that you just created in your local system itself, test out everything that it is working accordingly, and then you can push it to production. So how do you test it out? Now that you have done SAM build and there were no errors, just do SAM local start API. So SAM space local space start API. Awesome. It's running on localhost 3000:3000. Now the other thing that you can do is actually go ahead and install another important tool, Postman. So Postman is an API platform, so you can test out our APIs easily that we develop. So go ahead and download Postman and get it installed. Once you open Postman, just click on request, and request name, for example, this is Paraphraser. Learn NLP Paraphraser. And just if you want, you can create a collection. I am creating Learn NLP and save to Learn NLP. Once you are in here, just click on post request, because ours is a post request. Then you have our localhost colon 3000. That's where our app is running. So 127.0.0.1 is localhost. So localhost colon 3000. And what's your actual API is, it's in the template.yaml. So you have Paraphraser. So path is Paraphraser. So let's just give this, and headers you can give, let's say, content type as application/JSON, and just click on save whenever you want to save it. Okay, cool. Now go to the body, and since we have seen here in our code that we are passing just body as a raw string, perhaps what you can do is choose raw and JSON format itself in raw, and you can just give text. So just some format of text and some sentence like the folks are swimming in the well, and about to leave. The folks, okay, the folks were swimming in the well and are about to leave. It's any random sentence. Let's see how it works. So you have localhost 3000 Paraphraser. Let's run that. Amazing. Forget about the time, because in local it takes some time because of Docker and other things, but when you deploy it on production it will be very fast. But the people were swimming in the well and are now getting ready to leave. Fair enough. Good paraphrase. Let's try it out one more time. My name is Ramsri and I am a data scientist. Awesome. I am Ramsri and I work as a data scientist. That's the paraphrase. Beautiful. You created an API where there is a post request to this local, and you gave some input text and you're getting paraphrase text. Amazing. Now how to go ahead and deploy this in the cloud? Just let's stop this with Control-C, terminate. And the beautiful thing is, once you do SAM local start API and test it locally that it is working fine, just do SAM deploy. Let's do SAM deploy /guided, because we need to set up few things when you're running it for the first time. So SAM deploy ..guided -- guided. So default stack name, let's give the same name, Learn NLP Paraphraser. So Learn NLP and Paraphraser. Default region is fine. Confirm changes, type yes. AWS SAM IAM role creation, yes. It does not have authorization defined. Is that okay? Yes. Save argument, yes. yes to everything. So remember that right now we don't have authorization, that is anyone can call this API, but you can actually go to AWS API gateway, and then you can add authorization there, so that you again require a API key for this to be run. But for simplicity, let's deploy this and not worry about authorization. So deploy this change set, yes. Awesome, everything got deployed, and we even got the actual API that is in the cloud. So let's just copy that. And what I usually do is I create a duplicate of this one. I call this local. So local Paraphraser. Then this one I call it as AWS. So that I can test them out easily. So this is a local one and this is the AWS one. So for AWS one, all things are the same. You have your content, but instead of this here, let's replace with what we just copied. Let's click on save, and body, again we need to choose raw application JSON, and text, I am Ramsri and I work as a data scientist. Awesome, let's save this. And now instead of running it in local, we actually deployed an API, and automatically we got the API endpoint as well, because we had our initial template that already has API gateway attached. Let's just run this. I'm Ramsri and I'm a data scientist. Awesome. My name is Ramsri and I'm a data scientist. Amazing. So as you can see, the paraphrase is taking 1.8 milliseconds. Not bad at all. And I'm Ramsri and my occupation is data scientist. Amazing. So basically you can go to API gateway and create an API key, so that it works. This works only with API key. But for simplicity here in this tutorial, we have just seen how we can create an API and deploy this to production. And this is a production URL and you are testing it out here. So now you can go ahead and in any application, either through front-end code or Node.js, etc., your front-end can call this API with these headers and the body as this, get back the output and show it in a UI. So this is the first tutorial for API deployment with GPT-3.